Hi, my name's Martin and I'm an alcoholic. Welcome to Get Sober with Martin. In this series of videos I will be reading the book Living Sober, which is conference approved literature from Alcoholics Anonymous. What this channel aims to do is to provide the methods and materials which I used, which were shown to me, which were given to me in order to help with getting sober, staying sober, and this is but a small part. And I will just, before we begin today, talk about what we did last week, which was reading the first chapter, which is titled Using This Booklet. Now this booklet here, I will put a link in the video description on how to get a free Word document copy of this, and it also has a link of where you can buy a physical copy or an e-reader or Kindle copy if you want to read along and hold it for your own recovery. What I do is I will read one chapter a week, release it on Saturday on my YouTube channel, Get Sober with Martin, and also on Instagram, and I will share my experience in relation to any of the passages that we read through. So last week we read chapter 1, Using This Booklet, and I will just read very quickly the first couple of lines, which describes what this book is not. So it said, this booklet does not offer a plan for recovery from alcoholism. The Alcoholics Anonymous steps that summarize its program of recovery are set forth in detail in the books Alcoholics Anonymous and 12 Steps and 12 Traditions. So if you're not sober, or if you're just trying to get sober and you have no sort of solution or support network or anything, and you're just trying to do it on your own willpower, I would suggest, just based on my own experience, which you can use or not use, it's entirely up to yourself, that the thing that helped me was to come into a 12-step program, to buy that book Alcoholics Anonymous, which details the program of recovery and the 12 steps, and asking somebody who'd been through all 12 steps if they could guide me through, which they did, and eventually my life got better. And those people, we normally refer to them as sponsors. So chapter 2, which we'll read today, is titled Staying Away from the First Drink. So I will read through this. So if you want to tune in anytime a new video is released every Saturday, feel free to hit the subscribe button. That will appear at the end of the video or just underneath the video if you're watching it on YouTube, and it can remind you every week. What I also do is I release a daily video, very short, 1 minute or less, of a daily reading that I do every morning, just to center my mind and set me up for the day and remind me who I am and what I need to do to get well. And if you wish to have that, all you need to do is hit the subscribe button and you'll be notified when I upload that video on a daily basis. So staying away from the first drink. Chapter 2. Expressions commonly heard in AA are, if you don't take that first drink, you can't get drunk. And one drink is too many, but 20 are not enough. Many of us, when we first begin to drink, never wanted or took more than 1 or 2 drinks. And I would say that, all alcoholics are different, our stories are different. Some of us are very similar in our stories, but the disease remains the same. And I can't say that I identify with this part of the book. I never wanted to take 1 or 2 drinks because it never really did anything for me. I couldn't drink more than 4 drinks. After 4 drinks I would vomit and get sick. But I would also reach that special place. I would feel the magic after 4 drinks, and it was a small price to pay. Every time I went to drink, I went to drink 4 drinks. because I really wanted to feel that again and again. I wanted that fear to be taken away. I wanted to feel like that person that it would turn me into. And later on in my recovery, when I would get, or my drinking before recovery, I would sometimes try and go for one or two drinks, knowing what the consequences would be if I had more, and more often than not I was unable to have one or two, but we'll get to that later. But as time went on, we increased the number. Then in later years we found ourselves drinking more and more, some of us getting and staying very drunk. Maybe our condition didn't always show in our speech or our gait, but by this time we were never actually sober. If that bothered us too much, we would cut down or try to limit ourselves to just one or two, or switch from hard liquor to beer or wine. And by the time I'd got to adulthood, when I was 18 years old, I knew that I had a serious problem with alcohol. I knew that I reacted differently to other people. I knew that I had what I learned when I came into AA is the mental obsession. That no matter what the consequences of my drinking was, I would find some trivial excuse to drink again. I would forget the shame. I would forget the fear. They called it the disease of forgetfulness. I would forget how bad it was, and I would eventually drink again when I would try to stop. And I first tried to stop when I was about 18, and I came into AA at the age of 31. So I spent 13 years trying to stop or to limit the amount of drinks on my own limited power, on my own resources, and failed. I could stay stopped for very, very short periods of time, whether it be sometimes a month if I was lucky, or less, sometimes not even a day at certain points when I would make a commitment to stop. And I was asked when I came into AA two questions. Are you able to, when you really want to stop forever, are you able to stop? And the answer was no. I've made many decisions to stop forever, and I would be able to stop for short periods of time, but eventually I would cave. And the other question was, are you able to limit the amount of drinks that you drink? And the truth was that 8 out of 9 times, if I could not tell you how much I was going to drink. I would sometimes say I'm going for 1, or I'm going for 3 or 4, and all bets were off as to what time I would come home, or how much I would have, or how much money I would spend, or the consequences of spending the rent money, or having some engagement the next day and not being able to make it, or whatever it may be. Everything else took a backseat, and alcohol was driving. It was in control. At least we tried to limit the amount so we would not get too disastrously tight, or we tried to hide how much we drank. And when I came into recovery, I would hear people talking about hiding their drinking, and it's not something I could relate to. But reading this earlier on today, I realised that I was somebody who hid their drinking. As before I came into recovery, and things were pretty rough at that point, and people could tell that I was disintegrating and not my old self, and that things were going south. And I remember I would hide my drinking from my parents whenever I go back to visit them, so as not to worry them. I wouldn't tell them the whole story of how much I was drinking. I wasn't telling colleagues or bosses how much the extent of my drinking and how bad things were, because I didn't want it affect my job or my career, and the money I needed to actually drink. I didn't want that to be threatened. And I would lie to my wife at the time, for fear that she would tell me to cut down or stop, as this was the only thing that was able to give me relief in the world. It was my medicine, and I didn't want anybody to take that away, so I did hide the amount that I drank, and it took me some time to see that. But all these measures got more and more difficult. Occasionally we even went on the wagon and did not drink at all for a while. And I remember when the consequences were so bad a few years before I got into recovery, I said, I'm never drinking again, I need to stop, things are bad. And I remember stopping for 6 months, but I was using other substances, illegal Class A substances, and convinced myself I was still sober. And I would be in the bar drinking a soft drink, talking to friends and telling them that I'd been sober for X amount of months, and they would be looking at me as if I was insane, as I had convinced myself I was sober, but in reality I wasn't. I was in pure denial. Sobriety, I had come to realise later, includes drugs also, and it's complete abstinence from those chemicals as well as alcohol. Eventually we would go back to drinking, just one drink, and since that apparently did no serious damage, we felt it was safe to have another. Maybe that was all we took on that occasion, and it was a great relief to find we could take just one or two, then stop. Some of us did that many times, and that's the thing, we don't have to need to drink to total excess every time that we drink to be alcoholic. We don't need to be the park bench bum. We come in many shapes and forms. We got to remember that alcohol is just a symptom of something bigger. Alcohol was what once gave us relief before it came back and cut us to shreds like a boomerang. But the experience proved to be a snare. It persuaded us that we could drink safely, and then there would come the occasion, some special celebration, a personal loss, or no particular event at all, when 2 or 3 made us feel fine. So we thought 1 or 2 more could not hurt. And with absolutely no intention of doing so, we found ourselves again drinking too much. We were right back where we had been, over drinking without really wanting to. And I remember being hospitalised at one point and almost dying. I was very close to death, and thankfully the medical staff were able to bring me back. And I remember my boss was getting married about 3 or 4 weeks later, and I remember lying in the, just outside I had left intensive care, and I was swearing never to drink again, or using any substances or anything. I said, I'm finished, I'm done. I didn't know it could get this bad, and swearing off. And I remember about a week before my boss's wedding, which was only several weeks after that, starting to bargain. Oh, maybe I should just buy 1 beer and nurse it for the whole wedding, just so nobody asks me, why am I not drinking? I can hold it in my hand, and then, or maybe I should just take like a sip every 30 minutes, that won't do any harm. And then thinking, maybe if I just don't drink spirits and don't do any shots and stick to drinking alcohol with a low percentage, and eventually it got to the wedding, and within the first hour I'd had a couple of bottles of cider, and all bets were off. I was back to where I was prior to going to hospital, in the same sort of behaviour. And the thing I learned coming into recovery is, we can't have that first drink, and we will go on into this as time goes on. Such repeated experiences have forced us to this logically inescapable conclusion: if we do not take the first drink, we never get drunk. Therefore, instead of planning never to get drunk or trying to limit the number of drinks or the amount of alcohol, we have learned to concentrate on avoiding only 1 drink, the first one. And that's what it talks about. We can't take 1 drink. It's impossible for people like us, as we set in we set a chain of events off that end us up in the same place that brought us in here in the first place. Complete abstinence is the only option. And I had to close out all those back doors that I had. If this happens, I'll drink. If that happens, deaths, illnesses, relationships ending, whatever. I need to make a decision that I'm never drinking again, no matter what. And that was a day that was a complete surrender. I had to find something also that would help me deal with those situations. The situations that are going to be difficult in life. And I found that in the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, a way to help me through turbulent times without using alcohol or anything else. In effect, instead of worrying about limiting the number of drinks at the end of a drinking episode, we avoid the one that starts it. Sounds almost foolishly simplistic, doesn't it? It's hard for many of us now to believe we never really figured this one out for ourselves before we came to AA. Of course, to tell the truth, we never really wanted to give up drinking altogether, either until we learned about alcoholism. But the main point is, we now know that this is what works. Instead of trying to figure out how many we could handle, 4, 6, a dozen, we remember, just don't pick up that first drink. It is so much simpler. The habit of thinking this way has helped hundreds of thousands of us stay sober for years. And this is the thing, in the early days, a lot of us, or some of us, and not all of us, still have some drink cravings. We have cravings for alcohol. And, the important thing is that we don't drink no matter what. That's where we get the progress. We make progress as time accumulates in sobriety, because as time accumulates, we have the opportunity to apply the principles of recovery to our life on a daily basis, and we grow. This is very, very difficult, if not impossible to do, if we're consistently and continuously relapsing. We're not making the progress that we can if we don't drink no matter what. And some of the things that we can do when we do get those cravings will be discussed as we read on through the chapters of the book. But as I said in the beginning, if you are new and you don't have any sort of support system, and you're trying to do it on your own willpower, and it's very, very difficult, I would recommend getting a sponsor, doing the 12 steps, and going to some meetings. And during these times of that the world has found itself in now, there are many, many online meetings where there are no physical meetings. So some people just go to online meetings, some people go to physical meetings, and some do a mixture of both. So whatever it is you do, it's important that you have something there for the times when it's too difficult to do on your own. You have a support network, you have a safety net. Doctors who are experts on alcoholism tell us that there is a sound medical foundation for avoiding the first drink. It is the first drink which triggers immediately or sometime later the compulsion to drink more and more until we're in drinking trouble again. And it was explained to me when I came into recovery that, alcoholics suffer from a physical allergy. And this allergy is explained to me as when we put one drink into our system, it triggers what's called the phenomenon of craving that doesn't occur in your average normal drinker. And it makes us want to have more and more. And we suffer from that, and we don't trigger that allergy if we don't put any alcohol into our system. Many of us have come to believe that our alcoholism is an addiction to the drug alcohol. Like addicts of any sort who want to maintain recovery, we have to keep away from the first dose of the drug we have become addicted to. Our experience seems to prove this. You can read in the book Alcoholics Anonymous and in our Grapevine magazine, and as you can hear wherever AA members get together and share their experiences. And that's it, that's today's reading, and it stresses that we don't take that first drink. It states that no matter what, we stay away from it. in order to grow, in order to get better, in order to have better lives, in order to have any sort of chance at having any sort of peace of mind or any serenity or a great life, we stay away from it no matter what. And it's good to be here today. It's good to be here sober and being able to give back and to share my experience. If you like this video and if you'd like to see more, hit the subscribe button and let me know if there are any topics that you'd like me to talk about in the future. We're going to be covering different topics such as sponsorship, questions about God, and all the steps and everything else. And if there's anything in particular that you'd like me to cover, send me a message or leave a comment. And yeah, I would recommend checking some of the other videos that are there. My own recovery story is there, and as I alluded to earlier, I will release a daily video in the morning here in Sweden, just of the daily reflections. Alcoholics Anonymous is daily reflections, teaching us a little bit about recovery every day. Thank you very much. Have a good day. Bye bye.